Yeah, I feel like most of the personalities aren't a big issue for me. The one that I find the most difficult, and I'd be very curious to hear how you guys have handled in the past, are the kids that are extremely hard on themselves. They come back to the bench, and any little mistake, it's like, gosh darn it, or all the expletives you can ever think of. And it's like you struggle to kind of get them out of their own head and out of their own way sometimes. Those are the ones I find the hardest and most difficult to manage properly, just because even before you're able to help them, they're already so hard on themselves and they're down in the dumps. So they're already defensive with, I'm an idiot, I'm this and that and the other.
In all my years, I've never experienced that. But on the female side, tons. They're really hard on themselves. Hell, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
I've had a few of those, and one in particular, you take a penalty and come back sit in the penalty box and literally just have a meltdown, and then you go back out and you get another penalty within one or two shifts. So I used a sports psychologist, and I engaged him with the boy. And after a few sessions, the psychologist called me and he said, I want to talk to the parents. And it turned out the parents were the problem, not the kid. And then at the end of the season, one of the dads said to me, thank you. You've basically saved our family. I had another boy in Pee Wee's, and we won a game. We won by 4 or 5 goals. He was a first-year Pee Wee, and he's in the locker room and he's in tears after the game. And as the other kids left, I went over to talk to him, and he didn't want to talk to me. Finally, he did, and he said, "I'm scared to death to get in the car with my dad because I didn't score a goal." His dad's a good guy, so I went out and talked to his dad and explained to him what was going on. He was horrified. And father and son had a conversation, and the rest of the season was a hell of a lot better. So a lot of times it's just, it's parent expectations laid on young kids on what they think their performance ought to be. And it drives these kids batty. So, but then, I had a kid in juniors, and he wouldn't do anything I asked him to do. And I asked him nicely. And during practice in, February, I just told him, why don't you just leave the ice, take your stuff. I'm going to call the junior team across town. You're traded to them officially right now. I just couldn't put up with it anymore. And I got a 6-pack of beer for him. That was what I got.
Good deal.
Good for me. It was bad for them. I just couldn't take the kid any longer.
Hey, Greg, I was wondering if you had one or two memorable life you stories.
I've got some funny ones and I've got some not so funny ones. The funniest one, we had a surgeon come in and he was discussing what he did, and he brought up a video example. And I think the guys couldn't shield their eyes fast enough from the work that was being done on the table that day, and they were all like turning pale. Which if it's your first time, it could be quite the experience. So that was overly funny. I'll have to get you a packet. So we have packets for each year, like we have it set out, the things that we're going to cover, and then we bring in some speakers beyond that. Some other memorable ones, let me think real quick. We had one where it was actually the shooting coach of one of the coach's sons. He just actually graduated from the Air Force Academy this past weekend, and he was just sharing a lot of his stories and things that like actually happened to him in Afghanistan. And the kids were able to ask questions. What was it like? What's it like living with PTSD? All of these things, and it got very real, very fast. But the kids were at the edge of their seats, just wanting to glean things from this guy, and just expand the horizons of, what is like war like, and dealing with life and death situations, things like that. So it's definitely a wide range of what we deal with, but I, we have the kids. There's always one person who's a scribe, and it always rotates, and then they have to send out the notes afterwards. So it's always hopefully an opportunity for them to grow, not only within the session, but some responsibility with that.
Craig, what you just said about Afghanistan and PTSD, Ken Babey talked about his possible role of dealing with adaptive hockey, which is an expansion of the varieties of sledge hockey that might occur. And he talked about uh, athletes and what they were dealing with and the problems they were having in his programs with the sledge hockey team. So I don't know if Ken is still on with us. Ken, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I wonder if you could tie that in, because I think the big thing is here when you're talking championships and we're dropping names, and it's really good for our Eagles, but the perspective of the impact you have on the people you work with is most important. So, Ken, put it into perspective now. You've done the hockey bit, you've had 9 championships, and you've gone over to sledge hockey. So I'm just going to leave it with you for a bit here.
Yeah, well, I guess first of all, I think I really learned a lot about other forms of hockey besides female and male stand-up hockey. For example, in Canada and the United States, there's people that are blind playing ice hockey. There are people that are deaf playing ice hockey. There's actually world championships in both those sports. Canada and the Americans field a team. And in our situation here in Canada, neither one falls under the jurisdiction of Hockey Canada right now. And I know that people at Hockey Canada are looking to expand their role in that area so that Hockey Canada can become more inclusive and diverse and offer equitable opportunities and offer programming, because it's kind of like para hockey. I just went to para national championships here in Leduc past weekend, and there's provincial teams attending it, but they aren't under the jurisdiction of any legislative body. It's just Wild West, and we've got to do a better job of that structure in Canada for sure. And that's one of the things that I know Hockey Canada is moving towards, and I want to be a part of that. From maybe my next challenge in my life is to look at, I call it developing a center of excellence for adaptive hockey. And adaptive hockey would be para hockey, blind hockey, deaf hockey, mentally disabled hockey. There's all kinds of stuff going on. We just got to bring it under one portfolio, and I think it would be great. Timing is right in the world today with diversity and inclusion being a key theme in our world, certainly in the Western world, anyways. And I think it'd just be a cool thing to be part of and get involved with. So I'm waiting to hear what's going to shake out about this over the next planning phases at Hockey Canada and those types of things. But back to your point about PTSD and I guess mental illness in general, because a lot of our players that I have on our team, there's two kinds of athletes you'll have in para. Either one inherited some kind of an illness or an accident that's led to some kind of to make them disabled, or they were born with it. And being born with it case is usually around cerebral palsy or spina bifida. Cerebral palsy players now probably are going to have a challenge to make it because just the skill level of the sport now and the speed of the sport has kind of at the high levels, at the national team level, would be challenging. We don't have currently a player, and I don't know many that are playing on the American team either that have cerebral palsy. Spina bifida is definitely there's a few players playing with spina bifida. But the ones that have had, and they've learned to deal with their illness and injury in their lives, the ones that had it come on to them, we have I think about 6 or 7 players. Tyler McGregor, our captain, Liam Hickey, probably one of the best players in the world, that when they were young teenagers, they developed a form of cancer in their legs, and they had to have one of their legs amputated, kind of like Terry Fox. And so they're these players that have it, or they were in a car accident and become paralyzed. I have a couple guys that did trampolining and broke their back and suffered paralysis below their waist. That's why I've never been for tramps from our kids. They always wanted to go on trampolines. I would never let them. Anyways, they had to deal with things in different ways. And, we've had guys with addiction issues. We have guys with alcohol issues. We have guys with just going through some dark times when they're trying to deal with the tragedy that's come upon them and that sort of stuff. So I learned about empathy. I learned a lot about compassion, but also one of the biggest things I ever learned about coaching these guys is they wanted me. I asked them when I first started. I said, I don't know how I should approach you guys, and they said just approach us as you would your state teams. So I did, and I just expected them, and they want to be treated as high performance athletes, which they are. So that's what we do. And but there is some background stuff going on with them, and you have to be aware of that, and you have to find them resources to help them. And fortunately, for the ones that are on the national program, Canadian Sport Institute has a game plan program which provides clinical psychological support, psychiatry if they need it, and that sort of stuff. But just different ways. And another thing I learned too, and I was fortunate because of my education background, a lot of these players, they learn differently. Well, we know most players don't all learn the same way for sure. But, some of these guys have been on some pretty strong drugs in their lives, may affect their learning abilities, memory, for example, things like that. So, you have to sometimes find different ways to work with them and help them learn hockey. A lot of our guys never played hockey. They just took up hockey as a way to have something positive in their lives. We only have 3 or 4 guys that ever played hockey before they got into para hockey. So we do a lot of teaching of the game of hockey and encouraging them to watch the Stanley Cup playoffs, watch the NHL teams, watch the game of hockey played at a high level, the World Championships, men's and women's, those type of things, so they can get an understanding of how the game's played. So we're all understanding the terminology and the tactics that we're trying to do. Excuse me. But I'm really excited. Hopefully this Center of Excellence for Adaptive Hockey will come to fruition. My vision of this is that would be at WinSport. We provide on-ice training, coach development. We could have fitness facilities are all there. There's strength coaches, physiologists there. Mental performance consultants are there. We have a sports medicine couple, Dr. Benson and another one are there. So you could tap into all these resources. I'd like to look at applied research, how we can get our sleds faster and more lighter material on them. The Americans, they have a beautiful sleds. They had a guy at North Carolina race driver, I forget this guy's name, but he flew them all out there before the Paralympics and bought them all, got them with his technology of his team for his NASCAR racing, got them all the latest fiber stuff and built them beautiful sleds. And, a sled, playing sledge hockey, it's based on your disability, but also, you have to have, like the American sleds, the ones I call the best in the world, theirs fit like a glove, like a good hockey skate would fit a person that's playing stand up. Can you imagine if you had a hockey skate that was, you tightened it up and your foot was still moving around? Your ability to move and turn and that is very hampered by that. And so some of our sleds are that not to that caliber. So we've got to get there, and there's some technological pieces that I think we can do better, and we should be doing better. And that would be my goal. But yeah, that's just some insight into some of the things we're trying to do in the future, and some of the things you deal with in mental illness on para athletes in general.